Water can exist as a solid, a liquid, and a gas at the same time. Let me explain. To reach the phenomena known as triple point, water needs to be at a certain temperature and pressure. This is at 0 degrees Celsius and 610 pascals. So if you fill a beaker with water and add some ice cubes in, then surround that beaker with vapor, and you then set the beaker to the correct temperature and pressure, then the water will both freeze and boil at the same time. This is the longest straight road in the world. It's Route 85 in Saudi Arabia, and it's so long that it almost connects Bahrain and Qatar to Jordan and Israel. Simply driving across this route will take roughly 13 hours, which means that beards are a staple of men's fashion, but men aren't allowed to grow beards in these places. Certain armies, such as the British Army, have banned growing beards as it can break the seal on the gas masks they use. Brigham Young University in Utah has also banned beards on campus, but they've banned them since the 1960s when the hippie movement started. They state that, quote, men are expected to be clean-shaven, and that beards are not acceptable. That is just one university, but there is an entire country where you can't grow a beard. That country is Tajikistan, where beards are seen as a radicalistic idea, and anyone seen with a beard will be arrested and forcibly shaved. There is a condition where people are born without fingerprints. In 2007, a Swiss woman was trying to get into the US, but she couldn't give her fingerprint that the authorities wanted, because she didn't have one. She contacted a dermatologist, who found that the 8 members of her extended family also had no fingerprint. The dermatologist then worked with an Israeli dermatologist who found 3 other families around the world who had the same rare condition, which is now called adermatoglyphia. You've never had real wasabi before, and this is why. Wasabi comes from the underground stem of a family of plants that includes radishes and horseradishes. The stem of this plant is finely grated to create the paste known as wasabi. The problem about this paste though is that the plant itself is only grown in Japan, as it needs extremely specific conditions to grow. So if you've had wasabi outside of Japan, it is most likely made from European horseradish, and it isn't real wasabi. The TV show Friends still makes $1 billion every year. If you've ever seen a rerun of Friends on TV, then you know that the show has gone through syndication. As many networks have reruns of Friends, this process makes the show earn $1 billion in revenue for Warner Brothers every year, and $20 million a year for the 6 main actors. This island in the Pacific Ocean was drawn on maps until scientists went to it and found that it wasn't there. Off the coast of Australia, there was an island called Sandy Island that the explorer Captain James Cook had discovered in 1774. The island was then drawn onto nautical maps in 1908, but when scientists went to survey the island in 2012, it wasn't there. The only thing that was there was ocean. So why exactly was this the case? Maybe it was due to rising sea levels, but some people speculate that Cook found a floating raft of volcanic stone, and that there was no island to begin with. What is the worst way to die? Drowning? Getting shot? No, the answer is the experience of Hisashi Ochi, a nuclear power plant worker who, during 1999, was pouring a mixture of uranium oxide with 2 of his co-workers. They cut corners in the process, as they were behind on their schedule, and unfortunately, a catastrophic chain reaction occurred. Ochi was the closest to the radiation, and he received the biggest dose of radiation in history. He arrived at the hospital crying blood. The doctors looked at his bones and saw that the marrow was scattered, meaning he could not generate new cells. His skin began to disappear, with the outer layers sticking to his bed sheets. He slowly decomposed like this for nearly 3 months, until one of his many heart attacks put him to rest. The amount of pollen in the air during pollen season is increasing, and this could lead to more allergies. Due to the warming temperatures, plants are more likely to grow for longer periods of time and therefore reproduce more. Pollen comes out of this reproductive stage, and the data shows that the amount will still keep increasing. A study was done in 2021, and the researchers found that the average pollen season lasts 20 days longer than in 1990. Did you know that the patent for the fire hydrant was lost in a fire? During the 1800s, the patent for the fire hydrant was owned by the Philadelphia Waterworks chief engineer, who was called Frederick Graf Sr. This patent was then lost when the patents office in Washington, D.C. burnt down in 1836. How ironic. The popular video game Grand Theft Auto has made over $7.5 billion in revenue, but it isn't even the highest grossing game of all time. In fact, it's not even in the top 5, which includes Tencent's Honor Kings and Capcom's Street Fighter 2. The third highest grossing game of all time is Dungeon Fighter Online by Neopol, and the second highest is the classic Space Invaders, that has grossed just over $19 billion. But the highest grossing game of all time is also the most classic video game of all time. It's Pac-Man, and it's gained just $200 million more than Space Invaders. Albert Einstein died on this day 68 years ago, so here are some fun facts about him that you might not have known. Newton may have got his inspiration from an apple falling from a tree, but Einstein got his inspiration after his father gave him a compass. You see, he was very intrigued with how the magnets inside the compass worked, and after he left school at 15, he wrote his first scholarly paper on magnetism. He then trained as a teacher, but failed to get the job as such, so he went on to get a PhD in physics, where he discovered that E is equal to mc squared. The people in these countries read the most books in the world. On average, these countries all read between 6.5 and 7.5 hours of books a week. Next is Egypt, with the Philippines and China following in both 4th and 3rd respectively. The country in second place is Thailand, and their people on average spend 9 hours and 24 minutes reading books. But the country who reads the most though is India, where Indians spend around 10 hours and 42 minutes reading books every week. The two largest types of squid in the world are insane. This is the colossal squid and this is the giant squid. Both of these squid can reach up to 13 meters in length, but the colossal squid is heavier. For instance, the giant squid could weigh about 275 kgs, but a museum in New Zealand, known as Te Papa, has a dead colossal squid that weighs over 470 kgs. The only predators that hunt these squid are sperm whales, and some of these whales have lived to show scars from the battles with the large squid. Cracking your knuckles will cause arthritis, is what someone has probably told you after you cracked your knuckles. While they have a good reason to care as it is very loud, you won't actually get arthritis from cracking your knuckles, but you can get a reduced grip strength as you age. While we're on this topic, the cracking sound that your knuckles make is the bursting of the bubble of joint lubrication as your bones get pulled apart. But if you like cracking your knuckles, then go ahead, at the cost of your iron grip.